Many years ago, there was a cabinet member of the U.S. cabinet. I believe his name was Brown, and I don't remember exactly what his title was, Secretary of the Interior or something of that nature. And there have always been questions about how his plane crash happened or why his plane crash happened. But there's a phenomenon in radar technology that allows an airplane to locate a cloud form or a mountain structure or to know what their altitude is, kind of a multifaceted look at what's in front of them. And so satellite technology coming from above, a form of sonar type radar that comes from the plane, that's emitted from the plane to kind of give you a clear field in front of you. And then of course topography maps and things of that nature that have been recorded and logged into the system. They're kind of a trifecta that all come together. And they come together to tell you, in this arena, there's a river that runs like this. And so the map tells you that. And then your radar can look at the relationship between what's supposed to be there located on GPS and what it's getting feedback from, what it's pinging on the radar. So that you have an idea how close the mountains are on this side, what is their elevation. And then of course, if you have access to satellite, and it depends on how new your nav system is in your aircraft or in your boat, because they use a very similar thing, that proximity and the trifecta of the topography of the map that you have loaded, the radar that's looking around you, and the satellite that's looking down from above you. When all of those come together, it's really easy to have a GPS location and say, okay, there, for an example, is Mount Everest, and its known height is X, and the cloud base, according to radar and satellite, is at X. And so you may have been on an aircraft when you fly past Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro or Pikes Peak, and you realize that there's a cloud layer and then the mountain sticking up above the top of that. Well, if you've been in Texas any period of time, I want to juxtaposition a technological reality with a life-threatening problem. And that is the technological reality of a radar's ability to read something at a distance is that sometimes it picks up a reflection of something that isn't where it says it is because it's reflecting. I'm sure you've seen the movies where they are chasing each other through the fun clown house where the mirrors are, and someone ends up shooting at a mirror because the person's not really there. It's a reflection from 2 or 3 layers of mirror away. Well, moisture in the clouds can do a very similar thing. They can reflect an object that isn't really there, it's distances away. They can reflect a sound that isn't really there, it's distances away. And that reflection, if it's not measured in that trifecta, it's not measured against the topography, it's not measured against the satellite, it's only measured by the radar, it has a limited range. And so things show up on the radar that really aren't there. And sadly, some people base their decisions on that reflection of an object that isn't really where they think it is. And it creates 2 problems. The fact that it's not where the reflection says it is doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The second problem is it may not be where the reflection says it is, but where you're going is where it really is. There have been sonar readings that have seen a blue whale hide an entire submarine because the path of the radar sweep hits the blue whale and the submarine's on the other side of it. And they recognize this is a moving object, but they don't realize there's something moving behind it. There have been mountain ranges, underwater mountain ranges. There have been mountain ranges in the sky, which may have been what happened to Secretary Brown, that there was a false echo, that's the technological term, the false echo where the radar thought it saw something, but what it saw wasn't there, or it saw something in one place that was actually present in another. The aircraft crashed into the mountain at about 10,000 feet, which is a really low altitude. Even if you're intentionally trying to fly under radar, the aircraft's radar should have been able to see that mountain. And as they got closer to it, they certainly should have been able to see it. Now, I don't know how fast they were flying and why they couldn't have gone to the left or the right or gone up and gone around it, but the aircraft crashed flat into the side of a mountain at about 10,000 feet, killing everyone on board. Here's where I want to bring that today. I've said for years when training communicators, because I really find there are only 2 kinds of communicators, and I was talking with some other John Maxwell coaches about this last night, and I've mentioned it before on the show. There are really only 2 kinds of communicators, and they are both very eloquent communicators and both very articulate communicators, but one has something to say. And by that I mean their message drives them. Their message causes them to do what they do, causes them to get out of bed in the morning, it causes them to put on their shoes, it causes them to charge off into life, knowing that life may not always work out the way they want to. But they don't care about the risks. They don't care about getting on a plane and flying to a country where everybody else has been locked out. They don't care about getting on a bus and going into a part of town where the bus won't take you, where the taxi cab wants you to get out because they don't go any closer than this. They don't care about that because the message drives them. Then there's that group of people, and you've encountered them at the sales meeting, you've encountered them at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, you've encountered them at the networking meeting. In fact, it's why a lot of networking meetings now have a bell, a timer, a whistle, a phone with a timer on it. And that is because these are people that no matter where they are, no matter what audience they're in, no matter who surrounds them, no matter the level of intellect that they may possess compared to everybody else in the room, or the knowledge that they have on the subject compared to everyone else in the room, or their true understanding of the subject that they decide to talk about, they just have to express themselves. They are compelled to communicate, whether it's of value, whether anyone's listening, whether anyone cares, whether people are looking at their watch or trying to walk away, they're still talking. And so I've kind of, for lack of a better term, labeled these two people in one way. The one who has a message, who will take that message to the ends of the earth against all odds at risk of life and limb, that's the group who has something to say. On the other hand is the group that will talk to an absolute stranger, argue with a fence post, carry on a monologue when everyone else in the room is falling asleep or totally disinterested or even asking them to carry on. And they just have to say something. So there are those who have something to say and those who just have to say something. Well, I've coached both. I've coached both of those in storytelling and communication and presence on the camera, and how do you get your point across? How do you take your story and make it relevant to the people in front of you? And I've always used this phrase because we all know in building an audience and what we might call a platform, that one of the challenges is the emotional connection that the speaker or the deliverer has with their message, and the question of how relevant is that to the audience in front of me. Now, a master craftsman has kind of a key area that they talk about. So John Maxwell, as an example. John Maxwell speaks 99% of the time about leadership. So if you take John Maxwell and you move him to an audience of Ethiopians or an audience in Paraguay or an audience in Los Angeles, to an audience of pastors or an audience of government leaders, he's still going to be talking about leadership, but because each audience has A, a different need level, and B, a different comprehension level, and C, a different communication level, as he moves from one audience to the other, leadership will still be his message, but his method will change with that audience. He will adapt, he will move, he will change just a little bit for each one of those audiences. Now, for years I've realized that the toughest communicator, the toughest job for a communicator, or the communicator who has the toughest job, let me say it that way, the communicator who has the toughest job of any of them is probably your Sunday morning preacher. Because as he looks out in his congregation, whether it's 20 people, 200 people, or 2,000 or 20,000 people, he has to understand this one thing. Just like John Maxwell talks about leadership, he will always talk about leadership. The preacher will always talk about the Bible, you hope. But John Maxwell has an idea when he walks into that audience, regardless of its size, that they're gathered for a reason, that they have a minimum level of understanding and probably a maximum level of understanding, and somewhere between there, you can carve out a niche to communicate to them. You know what you can presume that they'll understand. The Sunday morning preacher doesn't have that advantage. In fact, he knows that when he takes his microphone in his hand and begins to deliver his message, he may be talking about the Bible, a particular passage, or an overall concept. But the audience in front of him ranges from maybe someone who yesterday was a Buddhist or a Hindu and said, I'm curious about this Jesus character. I want to know more about him. And so they've wandered into this guy's church, and And he knows that on the one hand, he has that person, and 4 seats over, he has the alcoholic who was beating his wife last night. And she said, if you don't get your life straight, I'm leaving you. And so he's here to figure out how to get his life straight. And then in the back corner, you have the guy who used to teach at the seminary. And so he understands every layer, every level of communication, every layer and every level of scripture, every layer and every level of psychology. And so he is the nemesis, if you will, of that pastor, because no matter what the pastor says, this guy's got the answer that probably could have been better expressed. And then you've got everyone in between. The neophyte who knows nothing about the concept, the expert who makes you look like a fool, and everyone in between. To me, that's the hardest audience to ever deliver a message to. Add to that the fact that there are a lot of communicators who are just breaking into the scene of being public communicators, whether it's writers, bloggers, video bloggers, television show hosts, etc., who may have a gift to communicate and a talent to communicate, but they're not exactly sure who the ideal audience is for them yet. Now, there are a lot of people who say to you, find an audience that has a need and then meet that need and you'll be rich. That may be true. And if you're the second kind of speaker, the one who just has to say something, that will probably work for you. If that's the case, I'm probably not your coach. In fact, I've given checks back. I've refunded money when people come to me and their only ambition is, help me write a speech that sells. Why? Because they're not interested in the transformation caused by the presentation. They're interested in the transaction that comes along with the presentation. Transaction or transformation. Those are entirely different. The person who has something to say is more concerned that the message that they feel is imminent for them to deliver will transform the lives of people around them. It will truly add value. It will truly make the quality of their life better, their relationships better, their career better, their earning power better. Whatever it is, it will improve the quality of the life of their listener. Now, if you're a deliverer of messages, and you're the person who says, well, it's like canned goods at the grocery store, I'll just go pick one for the day. Or I'll pick one based on what the audience tells me they want, and then I'll kind of craft it my own way, add a little salt, pepper, a little garlic, right? Then you're probably more in the category of I just have to say something than you are of those who just have something to say. And that vast difference still faces one other major challenge, and that is when defining the audience. It's kind of like the teenage boy cooking spaghetti. You got to have that sticky test. When you throw your message out there, you pull the noodles out of the pan, and many of us teenage boys and bachelor men will just throw it against the wall, literally throw it against the wall. If it slides down behind the stove, leave it there, you can sweep it up later. But that means it's not ready yet. If it sticks and when you try to pull it off, it comes off in little tiny chunks, you're going to have to get a spatula to get it off the wall because your girlfriend will notice when she comes over, but it's probably overdone. When it sticks and then you can grab the end of the noodle and pull it off, add your sauce, you're ready to eat. Your message is very much the same way. If you throw it against the wall and it falls down behind the stove, let it keep cooking. If you throw it against the wall and a lot of people resonate with it and you start to hear reply back from your audience or your constituents and they're liking the things that you're posting on Facebook and they're commenting and they're sharing and that message is being propagated again and again and again, then that's a good thing. You found your niche, you found your audience, you found your message, you've communicated it clearly, and everything is resonating the way that it should be. If your message isn't resonating, then you have one of two problems. You have the wrong message. So if you're standing on the mountain and you're yelling, and you're yelling and you're yelling and you're yelling, and you're consistent with your message like leadership or communication or sex trafficking or broken families, whatever it is, whatever your message is, if you're consistent with that message and you're delivering it to your audience, and you're beginning to hear the resonance of people around you go, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I kind of felt that way. Let me ask you a question about this. Have you ever thought about this? And what about this? And how does that apply to this? Then your message is resonating with the audience that you're speaking to. If you're standing on the same mountain and you're yelling and it's like crickets, then you probably are either on the wrong mountain or you're on the wrong message. So either change the message if that's the audience that you intend to speak to, or change the mountain, take your message someplace else. Now, there's nothing wrong with either one of those. It's all a matter of trial and error. The only caveat that I would offer to that is if you have a calling, and by that I mean you feel like it's an inspired, God ordained, you will go here. Like Jonah in Nineveh. He was told to take the message God had already put in him to a very specific place at a very specific time. If you just read the story in the book of Jonah, you'll hear all about him and the boat and the whale and all that stuff, because he decided that he would rather be lost at sea. In fact, he told them to throw him overboard. He would rather be lost at sea than to go where he was told to and do what he was told to. He would rather be dead at sea than to be obedient. I know people like that. They're more concerned with the prophet than they are the message. They're more interested in the opportunity to say something than they are delivering what they have to say. And it takes a very fine balance to bring those two together. But recently, in fact, it was just this morning, I was just getting out of the shower and this word came to me and I thought, that's an interesting word, and I've never applied the two together. For years, as I've trained communicators and public speakers, I've said, listen, if you're on the mountain and you're yelling your message and you're not hearing an echo, if there's no resonance from the crowd, you're either on the wrong mountain or you got the wrong message. Change one at a time. A/B split test, figure out which one works. Change your message and stay on that mountain. If that doesn't work, go to another mountain and try both messages. If neither one of them work, then you probably have the wrong message. But the word that hit me today was false echo. And I thought, what if you're standing on the mountain and the response that you're getting is a false echo? And I asked that for this very specific reason. I've been doing this video the month of May. I believe it's May 18th. I'll have to look back to be absolutely sure. Maybe May 6th. Will be 1 year. Every morning, Monday through Friday, between 6 and 6:30, I start the message. I try to nail it right on 6:20, but sometimes I'm a little early, sometimes a little late. But always within that half-hour window between 6 and 6:30. I usually speak for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the message that's on my heart. Sometimes I'll do a series of 10 videos that all go together, and it's a progression from 1 to 10, sometimes 5. Sometimes it's as random as today, where it has no connection to yesterday's video, and I have no idea what will have a connection to Monday's video. I have some of these videos that have been shared 25 and 30 times. They're all over the world. They have 4,000 or 5,000 views. One particular one has close to 8,000 views. It's been shared multiple times. I've reposted it in different environments because of its popularity, and it just continues to grow. And then I have some videos that there'll be 30 or 40 people watching while I'm live, and nothing after that. Sometimes by the end of the day, it'll reach 50 or 60 views, but it's on my personal profile, so I can't really tell, are they 3-second views that just showed up in somebody's timeline and they didn't turn it off fast enough, or did somebody actually take an interest in watching it? Sometimes I get great comments. Sometimes I have people that almost review it like a study. They go through the whole video, and I can tell because they comment, and in the comments while on a live video, you see the timeline. So they'll comment at 1 minute, and then comment again at 12 minutes, and then comment again at 25 minutes. And so I know they've watched all the way through, and they always have something interesting to say, or sometimes they're a little combative. And they're like, well, why did you say that? And how come you didn't mention this? And what about that? And I'm fine with that. I want every piece of information I can get to make me better. I want to be able to improve the quality of what I deliver. I want it to impact lives around me. And I find that to be very, very important. I also know that there are some who, again, even in the comments box, they just have to say something. They don't really have anything of value to say. They just have to say something. And they feel like if they can get comments on my page because I have 4,000 friends, that it will make them look, seem, or feel more important and more popular. Whatever. I don't care. But I am curious if the resonance that I hear back from the crowd when a video goes to 23, 24 shares, when it travels around the world, and people in Pakistan and people in Uganda and people in the Congo and people in Brazil are sharing it, and people in Canada are commenting on it, and people across the United States are engaging with it. Is that a false echo? Is it something about that video at that time that just spurred someone? Or was there someone magical in the background, one of those 23 people that shared it, who just happened to have the right audience where that message resonated within their audience? I don't know the answer to that question. I really honestly don't. I do know yesterday I asked the question, for those who watched this morning video, should I go deeper? I find myself very much like that Sunday morning pulpit person. I have 4,000 friends, and I know this for a fact. I have people on my Facebook fan page and Facebook profile who are friends of mine, friends with whom I've taught, friends with whom I've traveled across the globe to teach. Some are professors at universities. Dr. Kerry Wood comes to mind. Dr. Cheeky Wood comes to mind. Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell comes to mind. Dr. Tracy Mitchell comes to mind. Dr. Phil Jones comes to mind. And these are people who have pastored churches. They have spoken in government halls. They have delivered messages across the world. Mike Arnold is another one. And Mike Arnold's a unique guy because he's an MBA for an education standpoint. But he's baptized kids in the Comal River in South Texas, and he's spoken to audiences of 25 and 30,000 in Nigeria. And we've done business and ministry together and gone hunting together and shared cots together and slept in the back of a truck together. And so we know each other quite well. We also know each other's intellect and spiritual position and things that we understand. And there are things that we disagree about. And sometimes we'll get into a bit of a cantankerous banter in the comment section. And it's usually pretty high level. It's deeper theology, it's deeper commerce, it's deeper government type of a conversation. And I love those kinds of conversations. I love that kind of engagement. But I also know that I have young men like Joel Peter and Chris Anwadu who watch my videos and comment and send me private Facebook messages from Pakistan and Nigeria. And their understanding of Scripture is a little different. Their exposure to Scripture and to teaching and to theology and to commerce and to economies and to democracy is entirely different. And the message that I try to deliver here every morning, I try to add something of value for both ends of that spectrum. For those people who've come from other faiths into Christianity and when I'm just trying to figure out how to make this apply to my daily life. For those who only pay attention because the word leadership is in every message that I do. For those who appreciate and love John Maxwell and they want that message to enhance their leadership skills. And so the cycle of different types of things that I do tries to meet all of that. The message, I try to speak on a level that's simple enough for those who are young. I believe it or not, I have teenagers right here in America that watch this video, right here in Dallas that watch this video. Sometimes they comment on it, sometimes they share it. Sometimes they'll send me a private message and go, hey, I was watching and I'm curious about this. And they don't want the rest of the world to know about that conversation, but it's very important to them to get the answer. And I love that. I thrive on that. I believe it's what I'm made for. But when I posted, do you want me to go deeper? I got crickets. Absolute crickets. 4 or 5 people said, yes, I love it. Keep going. Do what you're doing. Some just hit the like button. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. I'm on fire. Like, call the fire department. Somebody call 911. Ask where I'm at. Get a bucket of water. Throw some ice at me. Grab some gasoline for heaven's sake. But a like does nothing. That's not a response. It's worse than a false echo. It tells me that you're paying attention because I showed up in your news feed, but it doesn't tell me anything else. It's like the radar telling me, look, a blue whale, and not telling me about the mountain range behind it. And that's what this video is about. Because on the one hand, I'm challenging those of you who are paying any attention at all this morning to leave a comment down there and say, yeah, this was an absolute waste of my time. Thanks for taking up all my time for watching your video. Or I really appreciate this candor and being open and honest about it, and I learned something from it. Leave a comment and tell me this is the perfect level of depth, or let's go deeper, or I want to dive in, or I have this question about leadership, or this question about democracy, or this question about Americans' history, or this question about echolocation. I don't care. I'm glad to communicate with you. Now, I'll tell you the message that burdens my heart, the one that I will still be proclaiming when I'm strapped to the bus and aimed at the wall. I have 2 mandates in my life, and one phrase that threads through both of them. The 2 mandates are this: equip the saints for the work of the kingdom. I do most of that through marketplace ministry. The second is leave the indelible mark of the fatherhood of Jesus Christ on this generation. I do that through mentoring, through one-on-one, through this video, through reaching young people in Nigeria who are in their 20s who call me dad. I love it. I have 0 problem with it. The relationship that I'm able to build with them is powerful for me, and to be a resource for them, to be a help for them, to be an outside opportunity for information and education, I take as a very high honor. But I thread all of that through understanding that I lived a life that nearly destroyed my family, spending 25 years of my life in addiction, and the first 10 years of my life putting my wife and my kids through hell, the first 10 years of my marriage. And my life was changed by grace, transforming grace. So when my wife and I do ministry together, that ministry we do together is very specific for families who are struggling with addiction. Sometimes we do that in the form of interviews right here on Facebook. Transforming Grace is actually one of our pages. You can go to that page and see interviews that we've recorded for television, but we use the iOS devices to record live to Facebook while we were doing the interview. So what you see is the behind the scenes, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, all the human nature, all the frustrations, the things that went right, the things that went wrong, everything that will be on the editing room floor when they get on television. You're behind the scenes for Meet the Messenger, behind the scenes for Transforming Grace, and Tell It Like It Is. Well, that's just raw and real. That's what we're doing right now. Tell It Like It Is TV. Some of this is broadcast, and some of it is only on tellitlikeitis.tv on the website. And eventually we'll have all of them in that one place so you can get to them. So let me ask the same question one more time. If you're paying any attention at all, if you've listened to more than 2 of these videos, if you're not paying any attention at all, then I guess you're not going to make any comment because you're not here and you don't care. But if you are paying any attention at all and you would like me to go deeper on a particular subject, a particular passage in the Bible, a question about fatherhood, say so. Speak up. Let me know that it's not a false echo that I'm hearing when people hit like or share on the comments. And if it has to do with faith-based leadership that impacts the family and equips the saints, I'm all over it. I'm glad to share it. Faith-based leadership that impacts the family and equips the saints. I'm all over it. Bring it on. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to know that you're engaged in what I'm doing, because I really do feel like I have something to say, not just have to say something. I'm J. Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day, and it's Friday. Have a great weekend.